Hello again, everyone. Welcome to Midwest Ag This Week. We've got a great show this weekend. I'm Stu Ellis, and I'm glad you can join us today. We'll take you to a field where soybeans were planted on Thursday, all in an effort to boost yields. We'll prepare you for a potential drought forecast this summer. Farmland values are rising. We'll delve into those issues for farmers who are at 6s and 7s over fertilizer. We've got some solid suggestions that might save you some money. We'll talk markets with Matt Bennett and explore the Illinois wine industry. All that and even more on Midwest Ag This Week.
Welcome to Midwest Ag This Week with host Stu Ellis.
Well, it's that time of year when some farmers are putting in early soybeans in the ground in an effort to boost yields by lengthening the growing season. Chris Ayler of Ayler Brothers Seeds at Thomasboro and Flatville began planting test plots on Thursday. Soil conditions, perfect, but cool. But that was acceptable to him. We are at Flatville, and this is one of those days in the early spring when beans go in the ground by Chris Ayler of Ayler Brothers Seed Company, and you're putting in test plots this morning. And these aren't really to test anything, it's really to demonstrate what you can do.
Absolutely, and this, I've taken the approach in previous years of side by side and showing the advantages of early planting. And I think we've driven that message home. Our 10-year average is right around 7 bushel advantage versus later planting. We've seen years where it's 10 bushel. So this year I took the approach of, well, let's go to the ultra early side of things, because we've seen some March and very early April dates showing some advantage even above that late April date. So taking the high yield approach on this trial this time.
You've given them a pretty good seed treatment, it looks like, and I'm not sure what all you've got on, but enough to keep them protected until they're ready for sunshine.
Yeah, I kind of went with the kitchen sink approach on the seed treatment. Fully loaded fungicide, insecticide, 4 fungicides with an insecticide. Then also use Saltro to protect them against SDS, because as we know, in early planting, cooler soil situations, higher probability of seeing some SDS. And then I've also got a nematicide on there, Trinemco. And then went in furrow with some foliar nutrition from Marco. They're Quick Grow Complete. And again, if we think about cooler soil temperatures, which obviously we're planting into, the nutrient availability isn't there because the soils aren't warm enough. There's not enough microbial activity to start releasing some of those. So we want to make sure that they're in the best position when they do decide to come out, that we can put them in.
All right, and so the next time you see us, why, those beans are going to be popping out of the ground, and we'll report to you on what date that is. Good. Thanks to Chris Ayler of Ayler Brothers Seed Company here at Flatville. Soil was a little cool, it was damp, it was dry on top, and there have been some growing concerns among many farmers about the prospects for a drought during the growing season, particularly after La Nina seems to be hanging around a little longer. Let's see what Eric Snodgrass has to say about it. He's the chief weather specialist for Nutrien. Spoke to some farmers in the area a few days back.
I get concerned about drought when we're still talking about it on June 1st. And that's just because what spring rains can do. We could have a switch in the flow of the jet stream that all of a sudden just comes through and for 10, 15 days just hammers on the central United States, gets all the way down to Texas, and just relieves it, puts the moisture in the soil right as the soil's thawing, and we could go into a great growing season. But if that drought's still there, when you begin your kind of summer regime of weather patterns, curing it with thunderstorms is difficult to do. So we sit here and we just patiently wait and watch and see how things evolve over the next 45 days.
Okay, so at this point, the jet stream is going to be changing with that spring barrier.
Yep.
that you've talked about as the sun starts coming in our part of the world. Why, apparently things do change.
They do change, and that's what makes predicting summer in March hard to do. And it's because you have to get past where the atmosphere makes its adjustment to the spring weather regime before we can really make a concrete forecast of where the risk areas might be for drought or for good conditions as well. So yeah, we'll sit here and we'll watch it carefully. We'll watch things like La Nina, we'll watch the ocean temperatures and to see how they affect it. But ultimately we have to get through this month of March, which we know is a transition month, till we can make a more, let's call it, educated guess about summer.
You've been concerned in the past about cold water in the Gulf of Alaska. Has it warmed up at all?
It has moderated, but it's not as though it's broken over to a warm pattern. So new data just came out here at the beginning of March that suggests that the likelihood of that water staying as cold as it is now into summer has gone way down, which means there's better chances that it moderates and warms up completely. And if you just want to imagine what that does, that takes the drought risk from the middle part of the country and just pushes it west. Now, it's still a long ways off, and it's still going to be my hot button topic. What are those ocean temperatures doing? And the reason? It's the only decent subseasonal predictor we have. So that's all we can watch. So we'll watch it carefully.
Watching the ocean temperature. We don't have any oceans around here to check the temperature.
No, but it's all interconnected. It's all interconnected.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's amazing how the atmosphere and ocean temperatures and winds,
Oh yeah,
how they are in it.
you know how confusing it can be. Yeah.
No wonder you're a weather forecaster. It's
We
fascinating.
Do the best we can. One thing we have noticed though over the past, especially last week, has been how mild things have been. So our temperatures, our soil temperatures have actually gone up above 50 degrees in many locations already in the area. So that's going to be some good news here. But we are talking about a lot of rain. So after talking about some drought issues there with that first package, there will be a decent amount of rain over the course of the next 7 days. We have two lows passing through. The first one already moving through right now, and it should be exiting by Sunday. And then we do expect another low to be coming through by next week, about Tuesday and Wednesday, giving us in many locations across a lot of the state, maybe up to around 2.5 inches of some rain. So you'll see our latest drought monitor still does have a lot of the extreme drought across Texas and Oklahoma, but in the state of Illinois, we still do have that northwest corner that still does remain fairly dry compared to normal. Indiana is all good, but we still have just had a hard time of chipping away at some of those dry spots in the northwestern side of the state. We have seen some precipitation though with this first low passing on through, which will linger into a little bit in the first part of the day on Saturday, maybe even a few lingering showers Saturday evening. But then we're looking at dry conditions and mild conditions back in the 60s for Sunday and Monday, and then by the time we get to Tuesday and Wednesday, a new low comes on through here, another large low pressure system, which will provide us with a bit more in the way of some of the rain showers. So again, combined out of the two of those systems, we're looking at potentially around 2 to 2.5 inches of rain in our area, and that will then depart the area for us on Thursday. Temperatures though for a lot of this week will be getting into the 50s and 60s, so it's warming up as we get into March. And in terms of our long-term forecast here, our 8 to 14 day outlook, still trends a little bit cooler going into the end of the month. And in terms of the rain, looks to be actually a touch drier too. So we'll watch how that ends up playing out here for the end of the March.
The weather may be drier, but the soil may not necessarily be drier.
Correct, especially with this next week here. We got, again, some good rain on the way.
That's right. All right. Good land is 20 grand. We'll tell you about that right in a moment.
Welcome back to Midwest Ag This Week.
If you've not noticed, prices for central Illinois farmland are nudging the $20,000 mark. Some have gone over. University of Illinois ag economist Bruce Sherrick says the recent upsurge can be traced back to some issues last year.
In 2021, we saw 23-25% generally across the board increase in total, but most of that was in the last half of the year.
And why is that happening?
You know, there was kind of the perfect storm. Once some land got to market, farmers had the ability to buy a little bit more, strong commodity prices last year, some concern about potential changes in capital gains and tax rate rules, step up in basis. Concern like that brought a little bit of land to market, started selling a little strong, and that kind of tipped a little bit more land to market. So I think it was a combination of a lot of things. On top of that, the inflation concerns that began to be realized triggered people into making the long-term investment into farmland, which has historically done very well with inflation.
Has this rise been too far, too fast to be comfortable?
Well, so not for me. I think markets are always smarter than I am. 1,000 people making decisions are going to be better at it than I am individually. I know it feels a little frothy, but if you look at it on a long-term trend as well, we're barely back to the long-term trend line. And so I think it is a complicated thing to know whether something costs too much or too little based on what's going to happen in the time that follows that moment. But no, I think markets have generally gotten it right in most cases.
Could farmland values rise even further with either carbon payments or consumer-type payments?
It's hard to turn on the TV, listen to anything where you don't hear some concern about climate. And climate and agriculture historically were viewed as sort of the, the enemies of each other. But I think if you do the calculations now, people have begun to realize the only place you can really sequester enough carbon to make a difference probably involves green payments, or paying people to put more organic matter back into the soil. In addition, consumers are generally more interested in knowing more about their food, and are beginning to pay for what I would call informational tracking, attributes of how things were produced. You'll pay more if it was produced sustainably, or pay more if it was produced humanely. And that's also very positive for farmland.
Not only prices have gone up, but the number of sales have gone up too. Well, your focus is going to be on planting, but you're doing that. You might consider having your implement dealership take a look at your combine to make sure it's ready for harvest. Given the delays in getting replacement parts, it's better to start now than to have long downtime during the fall harvest. If you put your combine away last fall and did not do much of an inspection on it, you just parked it in the shed, you might want to consider having a dealership take a look at it this winter while there's some opportunities. Eric Dutzman of AHW in Monticello is with us, and what sort of things can go wrong that a farmer may not know that you might be able to fix or see during an inspection this spring and summer?
So when we inspect a combine, we'll go through your standard wear parts that most farmers are probably familiar with. Their belts, hammers, feed accelerators. We're checking the play in this gearbox. So this drives a vertical auger that goes to another gearbox that drives your entire unload system, and it's a timed system. So if one of these fails, the augers will hit each other. So it is always better to try and find it before we have a failure. So they're actually like down in here, your shoe auger bearings. So you've got these bearings on the back, and you also have shaft keys, and you'll get wear on those keys, and if those bearings go out. And also this is one place you'll look for rock damage. You have your threshing elements and your separating tines. And these bushings will wear. And if you replace them before they fail totally, it's not a big deal. You can see someone's already put a nut on this one. But if these fail totally, it can let the entire sieve system of the combine fall down. Like this big drive belt, if that belt breaks, it stops chopper and rear discharge beater. So it's very important to go through the entirety of these belts, because if one fails while going through the field, the entire combine will essentially get slugged. Here we are checking our clean grain elevator chain to see if it's adjusted properly, and this one, you should be able to slide it, but you can hear that play. This one needs adjusted. This is the feeder house drive chain and feeder house slip clutch. This chain obviously very likely needs replaced. It might be out of adjustment at this point.
If you need a part, you'd better. It's better to get it during the summer than September, when you're trying to get in the field and harvest your beans. Matt Bennett is with us of agmarket.net. Sorry to pull you away from the basketball games, Matt, but nevertheless, we've had a lot of opportunities for the market to either define as bearish or bullish some of the things that are going on around the world. And some of those events, it's hard to really know whether it's going to be bearish or bullish.
Absolutely. this week we saw weekly losses for both old crop corn and beans. Old crop, simply just kind of ran out of steam, if you will. Midweek, we actually saw the markets fall dramatically with talk of some sort of a ceasefire or ease of the war drum, if you will. Whereas we came in on Thursday and corn pretty much recuperated all the losses from the previous day. And then you come in on Friday and it's kind of a quiet day, but front months lost some ground. So very interesting to note, as the market has fallen somewhat, we've actually seen some basis appreciation in our part of the world. So it doesn't appear that maybe as much corn is moving as what you might think. So a very interesting trade this week, but overall we haven't lost a ton of value by any means.
So at this point, how should farmers protect their risk?
Yeah, when you look at D's corn at 645.5, you look at no beans at 1467. Those price levels are well above your spring insurance prices. I don't want to get overzealous on physical sales that are not flexible. And so my personal opinion is to put a floor under the market, let the upside run if you've got the opportunity to do so. I definitely don't want to get in a situation like we had in 2012 where we sold too many physical bushels and then we didn't have the opportunity to raise all those bushels. You don't want to be there this year.
That's right. Mal, we appreciate your advice, a very sage advice. We'll see you in a couple of weeks. Thank you much.
Absolutely.
Matt Bennett of agmarket.net. Don't go away. We're going to have you trim some grapes and maybe sample the product. How many wineries are there in Illinois? More than 150 at last count. And that number increases annually, probably more than you can visit in a year. But most not only serve and sell wine, but also sell hospitality. Let's visit with the Illinois Grape Growers and Vintners Alliance.
One of those building blocks in Illinois agriculture is the Illinois Grape Growers and Vintners Association. And Lisa Ellis, no relation, is the executive director. And tell me what the association is all about.
Well, the association is charged with educating our members, the growers of grapes in the state and the makers of wine in the state, marketing our goods and services like we're doing here this weekend, and networking opportunities for the industry.
Okay, now how do you do all of that? That's a big job.
It is a big job, but I love it. It's a great group of people, very resilient, and easy to work hard for. So one of the ways we do things is we come to events like this with the Department of Agriculture, where we're able to reach, more consumers in 2 hours than any of us could probably in our tasting rooms at 11 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday. So we're thrilled to be here and partner with Department of Ag on the Illinois Products Expo.
Okay, now you said you do education, promotion and marketing. Was there research in there too?
Oh, research, you name it. In fact, we just came off of our annual conference earlier this week down in the Carbondale area, where we brought members in from all over the state and experts from all over the Midwest to talk about grape growing techniques and also winemaking techniques. And I think, one of the other things that we're charged with is looking out for legislative issues that impact the industry as well.
Okay, tell me what's pending in the legislature now that you're either pushing for or supporting?
Yeah, we're a pusher we're a pusher this season, and we are pushing Senate Bill 2976. Our wineries are their opportunity to establish retail operations outside of their own winery are severely limited by a cap on production limits and self-distribution. So we are hoping to get that increased so that we can grow our 139 agritourism businesses.
Okay, now how would that change things?
It would enable a winery here to be able to take a case of wine down the street to a restaurant that wanted to sell it. We do have some limited opportunities now, but our limit on self-distribution is 5,000 gallons, whereas opposed to someone who brews beer, they can self-distribute 232,500 gallons. So we're just looking for some parity so that we can grow our businesses on our own and become a more viable, lucrative customer for a distributor relationship.
All right. We see the grape industry just growing by leaps and bounds in Illinois, thanks to the help of the Grape Growers and Vintners Association. We appreciate Lisa Ellis, the Executive Director, being with us today.
We'll save you some fertilizer bucks right after this. Most farmers have probably already applied all their fertilizer for the new crop or have it purchased. But there may be some who did not want to pay the high prices last fall, or waiting for prices to drop this spring and find out that didn't happen. What can you do that's economical? Emerson Nafziger tells us what you can.
Well, the price of all of the fertilizer products is high, and it doesn't look like it's going to come down very soon. We hoped, say at the end of last year, that they might moderate some, and that hasn't happened. So we're looking at nitrogen that's somewhere between maybe 90 cents for anhydrous per pound of nitrogen to over $1 for UAN and some of the other products. Some of the specialty products would be even higher than that. Economics tells us with our nitrogen rate calculator that when the price of nitrogen goes up more than the price of corn goes up, that you cut back on the rate a little bit. Most people are very reluctant to do that, but this would certainly be the time for people that have been using 250 pounds of nitrogen to cut it back to something more reasonable. Our N rate calculator tells us, 170, 180 for corn following soybean in central Illinois is probably about the right amount. If people go up to 200, that's not breaking the bank. But the price of corn has come up a little bit as well, and so that moderates that just a little bit. But and I know people look at it and say, well, if I'm getting $7 a bushel for corn, that will pay for that extra fertilizer. If potash and phosphorus haven't been put on yet, and people are looking at the price of those, and they're high as well, those are ones that, we always want to think of P&K as sort of a long-term project. In other words, we need to maintain enough in the soil so the crop's not deficient. The vast majority of fields in most of Illinois have enough so that we could put none on and very likely see no yield loss whatsoever.
Emerson Nafziger, sage advice. Well, that concludes this edition of Midwest Ag This Week, and we hope that you've benefited from some of the information that you heard and saw, and I hope you'll share it with your farming colleagues. On behalf of the whole Midwest Ag team, we appreciate you stopping by. I'm Stu Ellis. We'll see you next week, right back here.